Welcome to the first video in 2017. Hopefully everybody had a good new year. Can't get out on the bike at the moment as everything is white outside, so a bit of a bummer. No riding for probably a week or two for me, I'd imagine. But I noticed on the last ride that I went out that my brakes were squeaking somewhat, so I thought I'd utilise the time now to make a video on that, just to put a few tips out there on how to get rid of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that your brakes are worn and you need to replace them. Could be a number of things. Generally, if your discs or your brakes are worn out, it won't be a squeak. It will be like a grinding noise. But it's squeaking just as you come to a stop. So it could be one or two things or three things. One of them could be worn discs, but I know it's not the case in this particular problem. It could be the bobbins on the brake discs. On the bobbins on the brake discs, they can get a build-up of brake dust, and if you don't clean that out, you know, it can cause a vibration which causes it to squeak. But the most common problem is the back of the brake pads. If they become dry, they can tend to vibrate against the caliper pistons, and that's what causes the squeakiness. So you can grease the back of the pads just lightly, just to get rid of that. So that's probably what I'm going to do now, and probably use that time just to service the caliper. But just for today's video, it's just to show you guys how to get rid of you know, light squeaking on your brakes, because you know, it can get annoying over time. So we'll get over onto the bike and get the caliper and the brake pads out, and then I'll show you exactly what I mean once they're out the caliper. The first thing I need to do is probably remove this split pin that's on here. Just pull that out. And what I like to do, I like to crack these nuts and bolts before I take the caliper off, because once you've got it in your hand and if your bolts are tight, if you don't do it regularly, then you know you can twist joints and break lines. I mean, these are braided lines, so they move about pretty well, so I'm not too worried about it. But I do like to keep on top of that. So I've just cracked the main split pin there, and then remove the two caliper bolts. You can do it on a stand, but you don't have to if you haven't got one. Just makes life a bit easier. But I've done it off stand, just so I can turn the caliper, just for the purposes of the video, just so I can show you guys. So I'll loosen all these off. Be careful if your bike has ABS, the ABS sensor, don't go twisting any cables or anything here. So I'd probably remove the ABS cable, I don't want to break anything. Just whip that out. Just move that to one side. That might be enough actually, we'll leave that on. I mean, you can take your brake pads out while it's sort of, the caliper's still on, but I like to service the caliper and give everything a good once over and a grease. I like to grease the bolts, the split pin and the caliper bolts with copper paste, just to stop everything from corroding. So that's the split pin out. Circlip. If you're worried or daunted at all about removing any of this stuff, you can either take pictures on your smartphone of how it looked before, or as you remove stuff, just lay it down in such a fashion that you can pick it back up and put it back in the correct way. I can't remember if that was the right way up or not. Just in case, if you are uncertain in any way about it, you may be able to pull the pads out as they are. If it's too tight, then you'll have to remove the caliper and force the pistons back. But I'll just whip these out. So this is probably what I mean here. I don't know if that's in focus. Hopefully you can see where the pistons, you've got the two rings, that's where the pistons are pushing against the back of the brake pad. And it can, over time, it doesn't need much movement at all, or much gap in between the pad and the caliper piston for it to vibrate, and that's what causes the squeal. So you can just put some grease on. You don't have to slap it completely all over the brake pad, but just where the pistons are pushing on. But you have to be careful, obviously it's just on the back of the pads. Don't go putting it on the front, obviously, because you're going to have you're going to have issues with braking. But as you can see there, there's plenty of meat left on these. These have got nearly 7,000 kilometers on them. I generally change the pads regardless of whether they're worn down after sort of 10,000 miles or so. I'll probably change them anyway, just because they've gone through then so many heat cycles, and they just become less efficient. You know, if you're quite an aggressive rider, then your brake pads, you put them through a lot of heat cycles, so they do become less efficient. But if you're quite a conservative rider, then you don't really need to worry about it, and you can use your pads obviously all the way down to, you know, near bare metal. If they'll still work, you know, they just become less efficient. But I just like to do it as good practice, just so I know that my brakes are going to be in good nick. What I will do off camera is I'll service the brake caliper later on, which means I just like to give it a clean out with brake cleaner, clean the pistons up, and just make sure the pistons are able to work themselves out and retract. It's very important if the brake piston or if the pistons do form or do get a layer of brake dust around them, they can then they don't then retract so well. They can stick, and that's when, if you get sticky brakes, that's probably the reason for it. If your brakes are sticking on, you should be able to spin your wheel. It shouldn't free run, you know, for a certain amount of spins, but it should get maybe a good full spin before it stops. You know, you should be able to hear the brake pads grinding against the discs. But if you turn the wheel and you're not even getting a quarter of a turn, then it probably means, you know, you need to service your caliper and make sure the pistons are free to retract. Because obviously over time, as the brake pads wear out, the pistons come out, but they need to be able to retract when you release the brake lever. And if that's not happening, then it could be that there's a build-up of brake dust around your pistons, stopping them from retracting. So you need to get amongst that and give that a clean up. But I'll do that off camera. For the purpose of this video, I just wanted to show you the brake pads. So this is the brake pad removed. I can probably show you better on this camera. Hopefully that focuses. You can see the two rings or sort of dirt indentations on the back of the brake pad, and that is where the two pistons are obviously forcing the brake pad onto the disc. And as I said before, if this comes sort of really dry, or there's a slight gap between the piston pushing against the brake pad, it doesn't even have to be a millimeter, it can be, you know, a lot less, and that starts to vibrate under braking, and that's what tends it to causes it to vibrate, and then that causes the squeak. So you can use copper grease. I use copper grease on all my sort of fittings, bolts. Just stops them from corroding and keeps them nice and lubed up, so you can remove them. You know, you should be doing it anyway. You should be maintaining a lot of stuff. But you know, if you leave stuff over time unlubricated and unprotected, you know, stuff can seize, and that's when you start sort of stripping bolts. So it's good practice just to put this on your caliper, sort of caliper bolts, locating bolts, anything like that. But you can use it on the back of your brake pads if you wanted to. I have got this. You can get many different sort of variants. I don't know what you guys get in UK, but this is the main. Well, this is a kind of a budget paste that you can put on the back of the brake pad. So we're going to put some of that on there now. As I said, it's very important that you don't get it on your brake pad itself. This only goes on the rear of the brake pad. Very important. So we're just going to put some on here. As I said, and we're not going to put it everywhere, or not cover completely the entire brake pad. Just where the piston is contacting the brake pad. Reason, I mean, you can put it all over if you wanted to, but the reason I don't like to do that, you know, obviously on these areas here, is nothing's contacting it anyway, and it will attract dirt and brake dust to stick onto the brake pad. So you know, to smear it all over the place, you're just going to be causing yourself more work later on. And once you have put this on the brake pads, if you're getting squeaky brakes, then you're gonna have to maintain them that slight bit more, because as I said, this is going to attract dirt and grime and brake dust to stick to the pad, which is obviously in then turn it's going to then stick onto the caliper piston. So you're going to need to keep on top of it and keep it clean. And if you're somebody that doesn't do this sort of thing or service their brake calipers, you know, every sort of month or two, then you're going to get a massive buildup of grease or dirt. So that's all you need to do. Relocate the brake pads, and do that on all 4 brake pads. I'll do it on the other side in a second. As I said, I'm going to service the caliper off camera and put these back in, and that should sort out the problem of squeaky brakes. Well, hopefully that's been a benefit to you. If you have got squeaky brakes, then do give this a whirl. It's not a particularly difficult thing to do, and the most daunting thing obviously is to remove your brake calipers, which not everybody's happy to do. But you know, I when I first started, I didn't know how to do any of it, and I looked to YouTube for videos on this kind of stuff. And back then there wasn't a lot about for the bikes that I were riding, so that's why I started to do these sort of videos. By no means am I a mechanic, by no means does this supersede any sort of service manuals or manufacturer's guides on how to service. This is just how I do it. But as I said, you know, that's how I started, and you know, I think it's important to put these videos out there for guys that that aren't, you know, so keen on doing it or a bit daunted by doing it. So, you know, not everybody likes to do it for sure. And as I said, I don't want to teach anybody suckheads, my subscribers that are, you know, a bit more hands-on on their bikes. You know, you don't need to look at this so much. But, you know, I think it's important to get videos out there to help guys or help others service their own bikes. It does, you know, cost you a lot less. It does save you money. Rather than to take your bike to the dealership and say my brakes are squeaking, can you sort it out? You know, this sort of stuff you can do yourself. So give it a bash, and do let me know if you have any trouble. Leave me a comment in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and hit the like button. I'm going to put these brake discs back in now, service the other side, and put it back together, and hopefully that's sorted out the squeaky brakes. Catch you next time. Take care.